This is the Green Room. I'm Caitlin Matson-Levy. And today we have with us Maestro Daniel Hege from the Wichita Symphony Orchestra talking about this weekend's concert at Century 2 Concert Hall, Universe at an Exhibition. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, Caitlin. How are you?
Well, I'm very well. Thank you for being here with me today. And this is a very interesting concert this weekend. I'm excited about it personally because who doesn't love pictures at an exhibition? But reading
Oh,
through what you all have programmed, it's fascinating how it all makes sense and it somehow all fits together and feels really good. Can you take us through what is programmed this weekend and how, in your mind, in your imagination, it all beautifully fits together?
sure. Well, we have four pieces on the program. So they work together wonderfully in a number of ways. First of all, we start up with this very wonderful fanfare called 7 O'Clock Shout by the African-American composer Valerie Coleman. She's a flutist who's actually Grammy nominated. So she's a great performer. She was a founder of Imani Winds, a woodwind group that's had a lot of great success, but she's also a composer, and she's been commissioned by the Philadelphia Orchestra, San Francisco Chamber Orchestra, the Brooklyn Philharmonic, all over the place. So she's really made a name for herself as a composer. The Philadelphia Orchestra actually asked her to write this work, the 7 O'Clock Shout. It's about a 5-minute piece, and it has a call and response, which she said is typical of the African way of communicating, where one person calls out something and waits for a response. And then it ends with this dance. And she even asks people to dance along with the piece, maybe in your chairs or tapping your toes or something like that. So that's our beginning piece. Then we move on to Maurice Ravel's Mother Goose Suite, which is 5 movements, originally for children's piano, originally a children's piano piece in 5 movements. And then he orchestrated it later, and then later made it into a ballet. So I find that kind of interesting. Ravel is such a great orchestrator. Of course, we hear from him on the second half of the program with Mussorgsky. So that's the second piece in the program. Then the third piece on the program is a work by Aram Cachaturian, who's an Armenian composer from the Soviet system in the 20th century. And he wrote a beautiful work, the Masquerade Suite, which has a very ballet-like quality to it, with waltzes and fast gallops and things like that. Then we have intermission, and we come back for Pictures at an Exhibition by Manos Mussorgsky, but orchestrated by Maurice Ravel. And that's where we will have the Universe at an Exhibition, images from outer space by Jose Francisco Salgado will be shown above the orchestra as we play the work.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. I have a question about the shout out, 7 o'clock shout. Um, is there any insight as to what we're shouting about?
Yes, well, Valerie Coleman, this is actually a very topical piece. It was written in 2020
During the
and
pandemic?
during the pandemic. And so it's a shout out and a recognition of essential workers who are doing so much, sacrificing their lives in many cases to go out and help the greater good.
Mm.
And so at 7 o'clock, she's talking about the time that the shift is starting to happen, the work shift, and people are all out in the street, and there are people shouting out the windows and kind of, making this very communal excitement and positive kind of quality being sent towards those people who are the essential workers. So she's trying to think of a way to celebrate. She's also very influenced by living in New York City, where even during the pandemic times, people were making music out their windows or on the street, just to find a way to still communicate, because people couldn't just go out and give hugs to each other. So this
Absolutely.
is a way for people to kind of shout out and communicate. And there's actually a part in the piece where the orchestra is asked to be shouting and whooping it up in a very, very positive way.
I think that we all have seen video footage of people on their balconies at the same time in the evening in New York City during the very first wave of COVID-19. And they were all singing together and shouting together, or they'd line up outside the hospital and cheer on the healthcare workers. And what a touching way to open up the concert. And it does all kind of fit together, this idea of celebrating humanity. And you think about the Mother Goose Suite and Ravel and how he was certainly charmed by and inspired by children, the beauty of children and writing something for them.
Yes, he was. He loved little things like little toys and things like that that children would play with, and you can just hear the charm in the music. He finds a way musically to convey things like Tom Thumb wandering through, being frustrated, wandering through the forest and can't find his way. And so you have this kind of feeling of meandering strings going around, and then you hear the chirps of the birds coming down to pick up the breadcrumbs so that he couldn't find his way back. You just feel this warmth and lush way of telling the story. And actually, he wrote it originally so that children could play it. So it's not technically too difficult. Piano, four hands was how he wrote it originally, and then expanded it into the orchestra. But he's such a great orchestrator, such a great orchestrator. He can take something that's written for piano and just his imagination just takes over and makes it almost like a completely transformed piece.
Universe at an exhibition this Saturday and Sunday. Saturday at 7:30, Sunday at 3 o'clock in Century 2 Concert Hall. For tickets, go to wichitasymphony.org. This is the Waltz from Cachaturian's Masquerade Suite. We'll hear a bit of that and come back with Maestro Daniel Hege from the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. The Waltz from Masquerade Suite by Aram Cachaturian, one of the pieces you'll hear this weekend with the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. And I have Maestro Daniel Hege with me today at Radio Kansas talking about this weekend's Masterworks concert. Before we get into any further talk about the music, because we could do that forever, let's talk a little bit about COVID-19 precautions. They are ever changing. We know this. So give us an idea about what to expect when we go to the symphony this weekend.
Well, the orchestra, of course, is going to be masked. The strings and the percussion players are all masked. I will be wearing a mask while I'm conducting. So we're all wearing masks because we can. Now, the woodwinds and brass, they have to be able to play. Some play with a vented mask where they can just put the mouthpiece into the mask and play. Some will be unmasked, but they're just going to be forward and they're going to be spaced apart as far as they can. For the audience, this is what's very important. The audience member must either show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test from within 72 hours of the concert. And a PCR or a rapid test is okay, but it has to be a lab test because home tests won't be accepted.
Home tests are not accepted.
Correct. So it can be a rapid test still, the antigen test, or the PCR, but it has to be lab. But if you do have proof of vaccination, you do not have to show that. And everyone must wear a mask when indoors.
Doing everything you can. And so appreciative. Do everything you can to keep everybody safe and still be able to have these just monumental experiences together. So the Mussorgsky, let's skip ahead. I want to talk about pictures at an exhibition. Sure. So we in talks about, what inspires these composers and what kind of the theme of humanity and everything. Pictures at an exhibition was kind of written for a friend in a way, wasn't it?
For Victor Hartmann. He was a very good friend with Victor Hartmann. The two of them really wanted to restore what was very Russian about art. I think the two of them felt like a lot of the Russian art was becoming too Europeanized and was looking too much to the West for the cues. And they both wanted to look more toward the East because, as you know, Russia is a very large country. And they wanted to bring back what kind of had these almost modal qualities. Now, Victor Hartmann was a visual artist. He was an architect, designer, and artist. And of course, Mussorgsky was a great composer. And since the two of them were so close, when Victor Hartmann died very suddenly at a young age, it really threw Mussorgsky into deep despair. And soon after Hartmann died, an art gallery put up a bunch of his pictures into an exhibition. And Mussorgsky went through and looked at them, and he was inspired to write pictures at an exhibition in memory of his friend Victor Hartmann, who had passed away. And many people say that the musical work actually is better, actually outshines the actual visual pieces that Victor Hartmann created. But nonetheless, this is really an ode to a dear friend. And so what you get is about a 32-minute work with about 15 movements, and they're very, very short. Some of them are very short, some are 2 or 3 minutes long, but they're like little miniatures, as though you're walking through an exhibition. And then sometimes the movements are separated by a promenade where you're walking to the next hall, and you can just see that all outlined in the program.
Mm. So we'll be back to talk about the work of Jose Francisco Salgado with the symphony and his work as an astronomer and a visual artist, and how that all ties in, and kind of the spectacle of this multimedia experience this weekend. But first, let's play the finale, which it might be the most recognizable few minutes of pictures at an exhibition. We'll play that here for you now and be back to talk with Maestro Daniel Hege from the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. The Great Gate of Kiev from Pictures at an Exhibition by Mussorgsky, the finale of this weekend's Wichita Symphony Orchestra concert at Century 2 Concert Hall. You can get your tickets at wichitasymphony.org. The concerts are Saturday at 7:30 and Sunday at 3 o'clock. A really exciting program for you to go. Just incredible music. I mean, we love Pictures at an Exhibition, but you have something incredibly special planned, which is you have invited Jose Francisco Salgado, who is not only an astronomer, but he's an artist, a visual artist. And what is he going to be doing for us?
Well, he's coming in on Thursday. We've already rehearsed last night. So he's coming in to help choreograph the work with the music that we're going to play. So that's all linked up. And actually, we have a member of the orchestra this week, Tim Shade, is actually going to be helping run the software that actually coordinates the movie with the music in real time, which is really exciting. What technology can do these days. But Jose Francisco will be on hand. And as you mentioned, he is the scientist. I mean, he really thinks about the science of so many different things, but really astronomy is his specialty. But he has always been moved by great and powerful music. And he came up with the idea, because he's also a photographer. He takes a lot of pictures anyway. And he thought, boy, wouldn't this work well with this? And so he's done several things. You know, we did Moonrise. This is not his first time here. He's been here several times. We did a program called Moonrise with Ravel's Daphnis and Chloe.
And the planets.
The planets with Holst. We did the Northern Lights, but that was for a children's concert, and that was with music by Christopher Theofanidis, so a brand new piece. So he does new music as well. But when he heard Pictures at an Exhibition, he said, oh, I've got just the right thing for this. And it's pictures of space coordinated with the music. And it works together so well. So people will really have an overall experience, a visual feast as well as an aural feast.
Century 2 Concert Hall this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. This is a Masterworks concert, but there are also other concerts coming up pretty soon. Don't you have something to do with film music coming up in the next few weeks?
Yes. Our next Pops concert is going to be featuring the music of movies. Then we have another classics right around the corner to hear music of Florence Price and Tchaikovsky and Ravel. So there's so much more yet to come this spring. So go to the website. That's also where you can see the mask wearing policy and the COVID test policy. If you didn't get it all just now, you can go to the website and it's very clearly explained there too.
You have to bring your proof of vaccination, bring your vaccine card. If you are not vaccinated, you have to have a negative COVID test, a lab administered COVID test, not an at-home test within the past, is it 48 hours?
72
hours.
Within 72 hours of the concert.
And everybody wears a mask.
Everybody wears a mask.
And we do this so we can continue to meet together in these magical places and listen to these incredible musicians and support the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. WichitaSymphony.org is the website. All this information can be found there. It's where you go to buy tickets in advance as well. And enjoy this weekend with Valerie Coleman's 7 o'clock shout, an anthem for the frontline workers during the pandemic. Also on the program, the Mother Goose Suite by Ravel, Cachaturian's Masquerade Suite, and pictures at an exhibition by Mussorgsky with the visual artistry, I suppose we could say that, visual artistry of Jose Francisco Salgado.
Yes.
Did I get it all?
You got it all exactly right. It's interesting that Ravel is the orchestrator of the pictures. It was originally written just for piano by Mussorgsky, and that Ravel and so many other people orchestrated it. But Ravel is on the program twice, in a sense, once as an original composer and once as an arranger and orchestrator of pictures at an exhibition.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. Greatly looking forward to this weekend. And I know the symphony must be so excited to once again be back together to make music, especially during this intense time.
Yes, they are. And it's wonderful to be able to play for an audience. So I hope to see as many people there as possible.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Bye.
Bye-bye.